Hi, and welcome to Divorce on Planet Earth, Kate Scharff's real-world advice for well-intentioned humans. And now, here's Kate.
Hello, and hello to my adored co-host, Jane.
Hello, Kate.
And I realized that in our episode so far, I have not introduced our esteemed producer, Eric Pagero.
Yay, Eric.
Hello. Hello, he's here. Jane, I'm looking out the conference room window here at Divorce on Planet Earth headquarters.
Yes, indeed.
National headquarters of dope.
Yes.
And I'm looking at a beautiful, what is that? Is that a cherry blossom situation?
Yeah. Looks like
Yesterday, it was snowing.
Yeah.
Today, we have cherry blossoms. Don't tell me it's not something serious going on.
Kate, there's really something in that, actually.
I know. It's disturbing, but for the moment, I'm focusing on the cherry blossoms.
Yes.
Okay, what are we going to talk about today besides my existential concern for the planet?
Yes, Kate, which is, of course, important, but we have a very important email here from Danielle that I'm going to read you.
Okay, hit me.
All right. From Danielle. My wife and I have been married for 17 years, but the last 10 have been pretty rough. We stopped having sex ages ago and lead pretty parallel lives. But we don't fight, and we do a pretty good job at co-parenting our kids, who are 12 and 16. Neither of us sees growing old together. My wife thinks we should break up now while we're still young, but I think it would be selfish to break up our family. I think we should hang in there until our youngest goes to college. How can I convince my wife that we should put our kids first? This is a rough one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I completely agree with Danielle that she and her wife should always be thinking about putting their kids first. The question is, what does that look like? What does it really mean to put your kids first? So here are some thoughts, and I'll be interested in yours too. Look, I know there are some people who just feel like divorce is something you don't do, right? That it's the worst thing that can happen to a family. And intact is better than not intact, pretty much, no matter what. Doesn't sound like Danielle falls into that camp. But she is among a very large and, I would say, understandable group of people who feel like the disruption of divorce is the worst thing that can happen to kids, right? That the having to go back and forth between homes. And honestly, when I hear that, I also think, okay, here's a parent who is also feeling the worst thing that could happen to them is not being able to spend as much time as possible, having to be without their children while their children are still living at home. So I have all the empathy in the world for that feeling or that set of feelings. But I have some other thoughts too. I think, first of all, if you're married to someone or in a permanent relationship, and by the way, whenever I say married, I really mean in a permanent committed relationship with someone. Having a legal divorce is actually sort of the least part. This, in my mind, the smallest part of divorce. It's an emotional process more than anything. Although money often becomes an issue, but it's an emotional process. So I don't care if you're legally married or not. When you have, when you're sort of stuck on an idea about what things should look like, and you're potentially splitting from someone who has a completely other idea, then that's not a benign situation. So having to talk her wife into something that her wife feels is not right for her already, I think it probably reflects a dynamic that's already in their marriage, right? In which they have a very difficult time accepting differences in each other and navigating them. That's my guess. But even if I'm wrong about that, they have that now. And I actually think you can't convince someone to remain happily who doesn't want to be there. Yeah. But beyond that, let's take on the question of, does it make sense to stay together unhappily or even ambivalently until your kids are launched?
Yeah.
Because I think this is a question a lot of people have. Should I stay together with my partner, even though I know I don't want to grow old with them, or we have decided that, as in this case, mutually, until the kids, don't, so that the kids don't have that experience of being popcorned around. Here's what I think about it. I have heard from so many people who have been through their parents' divorce, kids and grown-ups, that they are kind of furious with their parents for staying together much longer than they wanted to stay together, in the quote, for the sake of the kids, end quote. And they say it because, for a number of reasons. It might be because they were much more aware of the conflict between their parents than their parents knew, and that, some people say, I wish they had just separated already. I wish they had broken up. Others say, I thought everything was okay, and now as an adult, or as a young adult, I'm hearing that it wasn't. I didn't ask them to stay together for me, and now I feel like my whole childhood was a lie.
Right.
And that is the worst feeling, to feel like, all the assumptions that you had about yourself and about your growing up have been turned on their heads. Now, what do they believe? What do they trust? I mean, that's the experience of a lot of people who trust their spouse, and then their spouse goes and sleeps with somebody else. Like, what can I trust?
Right.
The whole narrative of my life has basically been turned upside down, and I don't know who the hell I am anymore.
Yes.
Right? So I hear that a lot. But here's the other thing that I think maybe is the most important one, which is, when kids leave home, whether it's for college or for a job, or, to go in the Peace Corps, or to follow their, their romantic partner to another city, whatever it is, they're often pretty young. I mean, they're either young in age, or they're young in emotion, or both. And kids go to college around 18, and I think we're already asking a lot of them. We're asking them to leave the nest at a pretty tender age, and suddenly begin to function independently in a lot of ways, and to self-regulate and all of that. It is very difficult to do at all successfully, and it's particularly difficult when you feel like your home base, the safety of a home base, is crumbling behind you.
Yes.
So it may seem on the surface like waiting till kids get through high school before breaking up makes a certain kind of sense for them, because they don't live at home anymore. Or maybe it makes sense for you because you are looking forward to the freedom of not having day-to-day responsibilities. But I mean, you have young adults, I have teens / young adults. And in my experience, I don't know, you can speak to this, I feel like they need me more in some ways than they did when they were.
Such an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same.
Yeah. So I think my answer to Danielle is that another way of thinking about this is that if you, since you don't see yourselves growing old together, if you make a decision now to separate, not only while you're young, but while you have time with your children while they're still young, and there's still several years before they leave the house, you have time to break into two households, move through the pain of that, kind of come out the other side, hopefully in good shape as a co-parenting couple. Time to retool from a romantic couple to a co-parenting couple, and time for your kids to adjust to life in two separate households, and begin to think of themselves as having two home bases in their hometown before they leave. I actually think, I mean, your wife's not wrong. You may also get the secondary benefit of beginning to form a new relationship, or just kind of, feel freer as an independent person. But even if that weren't true, I think it's the better choice for the kids.
Kate, that is really, really helpful, because I'm working with someone right now whose whole mission is to grit her teeth and stay together till those kids go to college, stay with her husband when the marriage is essentially over. And I know, I hear it, it's painful. Those kids know it. They know it. And it comes out in bits and pieces of ways. And what they end up seeing is parents who do not treat each other with respect, live basically separate lives anyway. Her thought is that she doesn't want the kids to have to go through look, her conscious thought
Yeah.
is that she doesn't want the kids to have to go through the mechanics of two houses when they're dealing with stressful high school situations, the mechanics of it and the back and forth and the sort of dismantling of the family home. I think also there's a lot of fear and ambivalence in that, but she swears that's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen the minute those kids go to school. So I find this actually very helpful.
Well, all of those feelings are completely understandable, right, as fears. But, and also there's a lot of financial anxiety. I think people worry, like, especially if there's a financially disadvantaged by, somebody who doesn't earn as much, or the money is tight and it's hard to imagine setting up two households at all, or two that are relatively equal in fanciness or whatever. I mean, I think people worry that if they break up, the kids won't want to be with them as much because they can't provide what they had before, which, we should talk about in a future episode.
Absolutely.
Because there are a lot of ways to cope with that anxiety. And I think we know that whether you live in an apartment or a house, you're the home, right?
Yes.
Kids don't care about that stuff nearly as much as we do. But also, if your parents were divorced, and as mine were, I sort of grew up with this idea, I'm never going to do this. This is an unacceptable outcome for my children. The going back and forth is actually just as hard as anybody imagines it to be, but it's not necessarily harder than what the kids are experiencing. So I think we're on the same page about this.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Spliticism time.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay, here's mine for today. Today this is one that seems kind of obvious, but I think is really powerfully important to remember, that one of the most existentially unfair truths about divorce is that while it takes two people to decide to get married, it really only takes one person to decide to end it. And if you don't want the divorce, that is a really jagged pill to swallow, because not only do you have to accept that someone can divorce you, you have to accept, if you have children, you have to accept that they also have the right to time with those children, which means you don't get to say, no, they're going to live with me. You can go, but they stay. Or you can go, but the money stays. You don't get to say that. You have to accept the losses that someone else is imposing on you. And honestly, that really just sucks.
Oh, my gosh. Kate, can I piggyback my spliticism on your spliticism?
Please.
I'm thinking about how existentially unfair this is, that if you have kids, and even if you do not want this divorce, you are asked to give up time with them. It feels so unfair. I've heard clients say this all the time. I'm getting out of the spliticism mode here, but I have a lot of passion about this.
Yeah.
Clients will say, I didn't ask for this. I didn't intend to lose half the time with my children, and I have no choice.
Yeah.
I have no choice.
Yeah.
That is a rough one.
Yeah. And what about when the spouse who's initiating the divorce has behaved very badly? And then you don't get any points for that in the custody discussion.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter
This is a
that they had
really
an
rough
affair.
one. Yeah, exactly. And this is not somebody wished for, expected, and it's really a tough one.
It's really, there's no way to spin it.
Yeah.
It just sucks. It's a thing that sucks.
You've been listening to Divorce on Planet Earth, Kate Scharff's real-world advice for well-intentioned humans. You can follow Kate on Facebook and Twitter at Divorce for Humans. That's at Divorce, 4, Humans. And if you have any questions or show suggestions, Kate would love to hear from you. Send her an email to info@divorceonplanetearth.com. That's info@divorceonplanetearth.com. And also, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and get notifications about Kate's latest episodes. Thank you for listening.